It is the morning sports desk on a Wednesday, the 8th of May. I'm CJ Baumgartner, who needs to get a shade in this room. Corey, my goodness, I feel like I've gone to heaven.
What are you telling ghost stories?
No, I think
Where's Patrick Swayze when you need him?
It's not even that. It's like in cartoons, you know, when like the kid sees his crush and the whole thing goes, oh, like that. That looks like
just put your hand up here. Oh, yeah, perfect. There. We got it.
Oh my goodness. No, here we go. No, it's like I'm a mime. I'm like putting myself in a box. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, I apologize. My looks just making the camera just whoosh.
You know what it is? I actually figured it out. We don't have any makeup.
It's
the stage. The stage lights have washed you out. If we just get a little foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Just a dab of some eyeliner, just a little blush in the spots where it needs to, so your cheeks pop, you know what I mean? Just a little to cut through. Mr. Sun, bright and glorious sun.
So if you're watching on the YouTube stream, I apologize. There's nothing we can do about it.
You look like you're being interrogated.
Where were you on the night of? Where were you on the night of old Mr. Johnson's murder?
Who do you work for?
You can't handle the truth. Yeah, all that good stuff. So Corey, we got a couple things to talk about locally. One is the game yesterday between Wadena Deer Creek and New York Mills in baseball, Park Region Conference. Two teams towards the middle of the pack right now in the PRC who have both felt like they've hit their strides through the midseason point. New York Mills finished third place in Section 6A a year ago and went to state the year prior. So they're a team that's graduated a few kids, have some new guys and new spots, and trying to see where they can go from there. Wadena Deer Creek the same way, who went to state in 2022, graduated some seniors. Now, again, trying to find where all those pieces fit together. And a couple innings in, it looked like we were going to escape the rain. It rained earlier in the day, but it stopped. There was just enough good field conditions to play baseball. And then in about the third inning, Corey, it started to rain, and rained pretty hard for a good 20, 30 minutes. Now, I was nice and dry in the press box, so shout out Wadena Deer Creek baseball field press box. But, for the players, it was rough out there. And not because, they're getting rained on, although that does matter. One is that for both pitchers, Enert for New York Mills and Krecklau for Wadena Deer Creek, they both, a couple times every inning for like the next 3 innings, had to get a pick and just clean out all of the clay from their cleats. And it mattered because it was a pitcher's duel for the first few innings. And then all of a sudden the runs started to come out for each team. Wadena Deer Creek would end up winning by a score of 10-3. But, you could tell Wadena Deer Creek put up 6 runs in that third inning. And not that you want to put a ton of blame on some outside factors, but with the rain and the way the cleats were, or the way that the clay was in the cleats, and you don't have that good grip on the baseball and because it's raining and it's wet and people are trying to dry them off, but there's only so much you can do. Things really just kind of, that one inning is the one that got away for New York Mills. A couple errors in the field. You walk some guys, base hits. And then you have a bases loaded situation in the third inning for Wadena Deer Creek. They're up 2-0 at this point, and they're trying to see what they can do. And that's when for Wadena Deer Creek, you had a big day from Carson Davis, because he comes up there in his second at bat and clears the bases with a grand slam over the fence in left center field. And that you hang a 6 spot up in that inning, and New York Mills just wasn't quite able to come back from that. And that's how they won. And not only that, Corey, but that was the first grand slam I've gotten to call. And I am not impressed with my call on it, because it was just a fence scraper. And it looked like, by the way the center fielder charged it, that like it just went in front of the fence and maybe like slipped under. And so I feel like I could have done a better call. I'm sorry.
But you got to call one. I've never called a grand slam.
You got to call that Josh Dykoff game, though, a couple years ago. So you get that instead.
I'm just saying, I've never called a grand slam. You got to see a grand slam. That's pretty amazing.
It's when people when people want to make fun of like Bramer for getting too animated over those fly ball calls. I know Provis for the Twins TV did that, and they're all like, oh my gosh, like, like he couldn't read a fly ball. It's like, you try it, because it's hard. Because and I know most people like aren't play-by-play guys, so they're not going to have any sympathy for it. But if you don't react hot enough, people are going to say you weren't animated enough for the call. Like, oh my gosh, that was a grand slam and it felt like you didn't even care. But then if you go too over anxious on a fly ball and it's caught for an out, people go, oh my gosh, you got everybody riled up for nothing. But
and it's high school sports, they're just not hitting a ton of home runs.
Right.
And every field is different, and every angle where you sit is just a little different. It's not a perfect perspective being 400 feet away from the outfield fence to be able to call a home run that way. And most people, a lot of kids hit the ball really hard and put a charge into it with a lot of topspin, and it's 6 hops the left field, the left center field fence.
Right.
So it just, you just don't get a chance to see them very. Softball, it's immediately obvious if a ball is going to be out. In softball, baseball, there is it's not very often where it's a no doubter.
Right, exactly. And so there you go. Not only did Wadena Deer Creek get a 10-3 win, but also that was win number 200 for Wolverine head coach Kyle Dykoff, according to Norm Gallen of Wadena Deer Creek School. So that's
congratulations, Kyle.
Big milestone there. Huge.
He's not that old. He's been coaching since he was quite young. 200 victories as our old coworker Dan would say, it's a big dang deal.
It's a big dang deal. A lot more to come for him as well, like you talked about. A lot more years coaching, a lot more years, it looks like, and we'll see how much that racks up, but hitting that milestone is really, really cool. So speaking of Wadena Deer Creek spring sports, the softball team beat New York Mills yesterday and clinched the Park Region Conference title, which is already crazy that we're talking about a team clinching the conference.
Congratulations. Yeah, you've mentioned it many times, having seen them throughout the year and previewing a lot of their games. This is a team that came into the season with a few expectations and they've executed. So congratulations to Coach Umland and the Wolverines. The Norm Gallant reference, I saw that same post. He's pretty proud as the AD, because not only did he have these 2 coaches in these spring sports achieve these milestones, but they're both WDC alums on top of it, and they're young coaches, and they intend, as far as everyone knows, to be around for a really long time. So a good stamp on both of those programs. And yeah, it's May 8th, and the conference is. It sounds like it's already wrapped up, but let's be honest with you. I think playoffs start in like a week and a half.
Yeah, it's not too far away. It's insane to think about. So that's coming up. I mean, next week is probably their last week of regular season, maybe one more week. I think next week is probably the final week of the regular season for softball. So. Yep. So it's coming up. All right, that's our local angle here today, but we do need to talk a little bit about the Minnesota Timberwolves. Rudy Gobert, not only did he have the birth of his first child on Tuesday, but he won his 4th NBA Defensive Player of the Year, which only 2 other players in NBA history have gotten to that point.
He has been, as many people have said, he was the best defensive player on the best defensive team in the league.
Right.
It's kind of a no doubter. Now, I know Wembanyama, I think, finished 2nd.
Right. And there was a big underlying campaign for him.
And he was insane what he did. Like, some of the individual statistics that Wembanyama had far outpaced what Gobert did. Right. Like, blocks, steals, that just reversing of course when somebody drives down the lane. If Wembanyama is there, more players screeched on the brakes and backed out of whatever that plan was. And let's be honest, the award for the next decade is probably going to be Wembanyama's. But for this year and for the 4th time ever, it's going to stay in France. It's going to stay with a French big man this year and probably for the next decade.
It took like 80 years, but the French finally learned how to defend. Look at them. Look at them now.
With the assertiveness none of us could have expected.
Never surrender after 1940. But anyway.
Shout out Rudy, best defender on the best defense. It totally and completely and utterly deserved.
Right. And, there's a few people that have screamed Wembanyama, and you're right. There are some stats, but it's like blocks, obviously. But blocks don't necessarily mean you're a better defender. in all cases. And that's where it's like Rudy, like you talked about, was the best defensive player on the best defensive team. And they're the best defensive team because of Rudy Gobert. Like that's those players. And we talked about that on the show yesterday. So everything goes to that. Rudy Gobert's probably not going to win one for a while unless Wembanyama gets hurt or just doesn't have a stellar defensive season. But even then, because you're going to run into the Jokic MVP talk where everybody goes, well, yeah, he probably deserves it. But then all of a sudden, if we give him a 5th Defensive Player of the Year award, nobody's ever won 5. And are we ready to call Gobert the best defensive player of all time? And you know what I mean? Like that, he's going to run into those and everybody wants to give it to Wemby anyways. Although Gobert clearly swept the voting. I believe there was like a 3rd place vote for Sabonis or something like that.
Yeah.
In there, which
I don't have the exact, I don't remember the exact 1, 2, 3 placings, but and Wembanyama's sick defensively.
He's going to be a problem.
And again, it's like you said, sometimes you get a lot of blocks because you're out of position. Right. Now they call him the alien for a reason. He's 7'6" and he can block things from farther away than anybody else on the planet. All that stuff is true. But it's like Rudy totally deserved it. So it's cool.
Right. So now that he's got that, he should be able to rejoin the Wolves. The Jamal Murray news came down. He got fined $100,000, which I believe is the league max. Not surprising to anybody. There were some people that were hoping for a suspension, but like, I think the only thing that would maybe rub some Wolves fans the other way is the fact that Gobert got a technical in-game and a $100,000 suspension for making the money gesture in a game. And Jamal Murray did that and threw things on the floor on multiple occasions, and he gets the same level fine. But, if it's a league max, there's not much you can do, but it just, it is what it is. I'm okay. I'm okay without it being a suspension because let's be honest, he hasn't played great in this series up to this point anyways.
I think he should have been suspended. I understand why you I get it. Right.
It's on a gut level. It should be a suspension, but also you get why. Like
it's not a good reason, but it's the playoffs. Right. And these things are on national TV and they need I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but the business side of it, I understand the business side of it. Right. And him being allowed to play. I think he totally should have been suspended. You can't, if it would have been a fan who threw something on the floor, they would have been kicked out and never invited back ever again.
Banned for life.
That fan would have been suspended. Worst case scenario, Ron Artest would have come up and punched you in the face for throwing something on the floor. You know what I'm saying? So like a suspension, he should have been suspended. I get why he wasn't. And I'm not even terribly upset that he wasn't either.
No, exactly. And I think we're not terribly upset because he just hasn't played well in this series. So his own form of punishment.
I'm not banking on that though, by the way. That dude's a stud in the playoffs and has proven over and over again. So I would rather him not play. But I get it.
His own punishment is getting followed by Jaden McDaniels, not only on the court, but in his personal life. He wakes up in the morning, Jaden McDaniels is just by his bedside. Mm-hmm. It's like, thought you never wake up. And that's basically.
I look forward to the fans who had the Devin Booker t-shirts to what the Jamal Murray t-shirts are going to look like.
It's going to be good. Well, and if the Wolves win game 3, you know what everybody's going to say about Jamal Murray? I'm like, well, he was throwing in the towel there.
Boo.
Like that. That's what's coming. That's what's coming. If the Wolves end up winning this series in 4 or 5 games, that's what everybody will take away from it. All right. One last thing that we'll talk about on the sports desk, Corey, today is that the Minnesota Twins lost 10-6. It was a weird game overall. It's just one of those games. You lose the bullpen.
Game in May. Who cares? I don't want to discredit whatever.
Right. It's a game. Ryan Jeffers hit an absolute nuke into the upper deck. Ryan Jeffers, by the way, leads all. Not only is he the best hitting catcher in baseball, he leads the American League in on base plus slugging. That dude's going to be an all-star this year if he keeps this course up. Mm-hmm. So it's a really good sign for him. But the bullpen implodes, and that's the story of the game. But also the fact that there's no Duran today, there's no Thielbar, and there's no Jack. So you've used those guys up. So you had to bring in the middle, the back part of your bullpen in a tight game, and some things got out of hand, but there's really not much you can do because you could wear out your bullpen that night and then in the next day be in a similar situation and whatever. It's May, like you talked about. If this were September, yeah, you'd probably throw Duran in on, like, you wouldn't be afraid to overuse Duran because you have to. But in this point, in this juncture, Seattle's a good team. You know, you weren't waving the white flag, but it's just move on to the next one. You still got 2 more games against them.
You can't worry about tomorrow's game today. Like, the Twins had to do those things to win the game yesterday.
Right.
And that thusly the scenario works out but that's okay. You can't worry about tomorrow. You have to play and try to win today's game.
Right. Exactly. And for that, there you go. Max Kepler, by the way, has just been on a tear. I think he's had on like a 10-game hitting streak. So shout out to whichever clown when he came off the IL said, well, I don't think he's going to help him that much. So Max Kepler, look at us. We're shouting out the Germans and the French today.
We're idiots. We're idiots when it comes to baseball. Not about the French and German. They seem like very fine people.
Fine people on both sides, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want some French wine and a German beer? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Look, it's a win-win. It's what we call the best of both worlds.
Who wouldn't want a croissant and a brat right now? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly. This has been the morning sports desk for Thursday, May 8th. Wednesday, May 8th.